be live on TV momentarily. Good evening, everybody. Sort of. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Litchfield Planning Board meeting of September 17th, 2019. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, the reason I look at the TV is because from what they told me, once it comes right on, then you just gotta have to start speaking, otherwise it delays it. So, so that's why I'm focused on the TV. Sorry. All right. Good evening, everyone. We have with us this evening a new alternate, Curtis Sampson. Welcome.
Thank you.
I know this is your first meeting tonight. And we have Tony Tuckerini is Tucker. I can't say his name. Tarecki isn't here. Thank you. This evening. Joan is not here this evening with us, but we do have Jay Minkar, our NRPC planner. If we need to vote, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Well, I can either throw it out to either alternate. If we have a vote this evening, does either one of you would like to fill in for Tony?
I'm new here, so you're probably gonna have more information on.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll have Ron be a voting member tonight for appointment of alternates. The roll call of members present: Michael Proto, chair.
Kimberly Queen and vice chair.
Kate Stevens, member.
Ron Stevens, alternate.
James Buffetti, member.
Joshua Smith, member.
First item is public input on non-agenda items not on the agenda for this evening. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward about any non-agenda items? Okay, please step forward, your name and address.
Rick Charbonneau, 401 Charles Bancroft Highway. As you guys all know, we've gone through many meetings with Mel's when they came for their expansion and whatnot. And once again, Mel's open for another season, and Carnage was supposed to be fenced in, but Carnage is not fenced in. Sidewalk was supposed to be built, sidewalk's not built. So there's things that out there that they opened this past Saturday and it's not complete. So I'm just wondering what the board's doing about that.
I have not heard anything from, Troy was our zoning person. I know Kevin is the interim building inspector now.
No, you've hired a building inspector.
Or if we have, I wouldn't know about that.
So I guess I'm just asking because we went through several meetings and the plan was
Right.
there, and Carnage was always, because it's a pile of garbage piled up out there, or it looks like a pile of garbage, and we all, I think,
Yeah.
pretty much agreed to that. So it opened last week and it's not fenced in.
Okay.
So
Have you spoken to anybody? Have you spoken to Troy? Have you spoken
nope,
to?
I'm here for the planning board because
Okay.
I've tried that before and didn't go nowhere. So I guess I'm asking the planning board, what you're going to do to enforce your plan.
Right.
I
Well-
can certainly inquire on behalf of the board.
Yeah, if you can inquire, Jay, that would be good. Normally what happens is it goes before the zoning officer or the building code enforcement officer, and then someone files a cease and desist. And then if someone wants to appeal that, then it comes before the planning board. That's my understanding.
Well, I guess I'm asking how they are able to operate once again without the site plan being enforced. And that's what's happening. Again,
But I think if you were to bring an action, I think that's the avenue it has to take, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we have authority certainly to, hear if there's an issue with the site plan and,
okay, so I guess I would like you guys to determine if there's a problem with the site plan, and then I can bring it to the administrator or whoever, the zoning administrator, whoever that is. But I guess someone's got to determine if they're living up to the plan. So,
Yeah.
and to me, it's the planning board. The planning board is the one that approved the plan with certain conditions on it.
Right.
And I don't believe those conditions have been met, and they're open again.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm certainly, Jay, if you want to
Absolutely.
Look
I'll
into
review the
this
conditions
and,
of approval.
yeah.
I'll look at the site and
see
I'll
if,
check to
what we could do.
And if you can let me know,
I will.
I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other members of the public who wish to talk on non-agenda items this evening? Okay. Hearing none, I'll move to the first order of business, or the only order of business tonight. Subdivision plan by the estate of Fred D. and Janet McQuestion, tax map 15, lot 14, 124 Hillcrest Road, to subdivide one lot into 16 lots in the residential district. Is the applicant present this evening? The applicant come forward, state his name, and introduce yourselves to the board.
All right, good evening, everyone. Tucker McCarthy, I'm an engineer with Keach Nordstrom Associates. With me this evening is John Noseworthy. He is the executor of the estate for the owners of the property. This property is located at 124 Hillcrest Road. It's map 15, lot 14. It is just west of the intersection of Hillcrest Road and Albuquerque Avenue. There's an existing house on this lot. The lot does have frontage on both Hillcrest Road and Charles Bancroft Highway. I don't know if you remember when we came and presented this conceptually. It's a long, skinny lot, and it does touch both Hillcrest and Charles Bancroft Highway. This lot has just over 30 acres. As you can see on the site plan, there are two areas of wetlands on this site. There's a large one on the west side of the site, and then there's a skinny stream channel that crosses closer to Hillcrest Road. And I'm not sure if there are any members of the planning board that were able to attend the site walk, but that was the area that you saw out there. So this project is proposing a 16 lot subdivision. Two of those lots, one of the lots will include the existing house on Hillcrest Road, which will remain on its own lot. One of the lots will be having frontage on Charles Bancroft Highway, and the remaining 14 will be located with access and frontage off of the proposed cul-de-sac and roadway. Part of this will include a wetland crossing over the channel that folks at the site walk saw. And we will be proposing an open box culvert, which will include some impacts to the wetlands and the buffer as well. Currently, we have requested a conditional use permit to the planning board for the purpose of not proposing a conservation open space development under, I believe it is criteria 1, which talks about that the property is ill-suited for an conservation open space development. Prior to the last hearing, we did receive a review letter from NRPC from Jay Mankara, and he had some issues with the conditional use permit application. And through some discussions with him and some stuff that we've looked into, we would actually like to withdraw that conditional use permit and move forward with providing a conservation open space development. And I'll get into that a little bit later. There's nothing that really changes to the design or the layout of the site. It's more of just how we are asking for approvals from the board. So if that's okay, we would like to just remove that specific request from the board for the conditional use permit application. There are a couple variations that we'll be requesting from the dimensional requirements of the conservation open space development, which is allowed. The planning board is allowed to, it's not specifically a waiver, but it is, the planning board is allowed to approve some variations from those requirements, which is outlined in 575 6.6.1.f of the zoning ordinance, I believe it is. So I'll get into those a little bit further. I just kind of want to give you guys a little bit more of an outline of the project. So We've already made a couple stops prior to the planning board. We were in front of the Conservation Commission regarding the wetland impacts for the proposed roadway crossing. And on September 5th, the Conservation Commission did vote to give the recommendation to the ZBA in favor of the project regarding the special exception application that we had in front of the ZBA. The project did receive approval from the ZBA for that special exception for the wetland crossing on September 11th. And also at that hearing on September 11th, the ZBA granted approval of a variance for a proposed lot with less than the 150 feet of required frontage on Charles Bancroft Highway. I'm not sure if you recall from the conceptual hearing, but we do have a small piece of dry land that has frontage on Charles Bancroft Highway. It has 132.8 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required. So we did receive a variance for reduced frontage for that lot. I will get into that a little bit more later. So as part of, there are a number of state approvals that are required as part of this project, which are pending in process. We have a New Hampshire DES alteration and terrain permit application, which pertains to stormwater and treatment. Also have NHDES Wetlands Bureau application for wetland impacts. NHDES subdivision requirements will be a part of this application. And then we also have permits to the DOT for curb cuts to Charles Bancroft Highway and Hillcrest Road as well. As part of the providing a conservation open space development, if you can see this kind of sketch over here, there's an existing railroad right-of-way. Sorry, it's not existing, a previous railroad right-of-way that cuts through the western portion of the site. You can see it's highlighted in brown. The right-of-way no longer exists. It was actually deeded back to the property. It's shown on here kind of just for graphical. So we would provide an easement in that brown section for town access in the future case that access was granted on either side of this property, that it would be able to be used for some type of trail system. So that is one of the things that we'd like to provide to the town as part of the conservation open space development. The other part is you can see on the western portion, that larger wetland complex that I've highlighted in green. We would put a deed restriction on that. So there would be no type of impacts or future development that would be allowed on there. So getting back to the variations of the conservation open space development, I've highlighted two lots in kind of a greenish blue here. One is the existing house and one is the lot that would have frontage on Charles Bancroft Highway. One of the requirements of the conservation open space development is that let's see here. The proposed lots need to have frontage and access on the proposed road network. So we would ask that the board allow for those two lots to not have access on the proposed road network. The other item that we would request the board to approve is that one of the requirements of the open space conservation subdivision is that no houses be located within 150 feet of an existing right-of-way. So you can see the 4 lots that are kind of highlighted in magenta. We would ask that the board allow. One is the existing house, one is the house on the lot on Charles Bancroft Highway, and then the first 2 lots coming off of our new road. We feel that's typical for the neighborhood. They would have, of course, the 50-foot frontage, 50-foot setback from the frontage. So. The other part of this in discussions with Jay is that in order to propose a conservation open space development, we need to provide a yield plan showing that we conventionally can provide 16 lots. And so we have actually put together, the part of that is that you are not allowed to have a yield plan for a lot that requires a waiver or a variance. So that variance for that lot on Charles Bancroft Highway, of course, would not be allowed. However, we did put together a yield plan that if you proposed a new road and right away, now just remember this is just a yield plan. Likely nobody would ever build it this way, but it does show conventionally that you could, in theory, propose a road network and right of way onto that lot and still have the lot area. Now, with the conservation open space development, it allows you to reduce the frontage to 90 feet. So actually, in proposing a conservation open space development, we wouldn't technically need the variance that we obtained from the ZBA for that other lot, given that the planning board would allow us to do a lot not off the proposed roadway. So the yield plan usually is not an engineered plan. It's kind of just a sort of a sketch, and we would provide that. And we would revise our plan sets to move forward with the conservation open space development. I think that's pretty much all I had from our standpoint. And I know there's kind of a lot there to go over. One of the things I did want to mention is that I do have to kind of apologize because I originally had designed the wetland crossing as a large span open box culvert that wouldn't impact any wetlands. As we looked through and did some value engineering in our design, we realized that that was just a little bit unfeasible. And also given, as I'm sure the members that were at the site walk saw, there isn't really a high value of this wetland. There is a small stream that flows through there. So as we discussed with the ZBA and the Conservation Commission, what we are proposing would be a 5-foot wide, 3-foot high box culvert. It would be an open box culvert. We would set it down over that existing stream channel, not disturb it at all. We have some very minor temporary and permanent impacts to the wetland. What that also allows us to do is reduce some of our buffer impacts because there's less fill for that large roadway. That would be the large culvert that would be we would need to install in order to span that whole thing. So, those changes were presented to Conservation and ZBA.
Okay.
So that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions.
Before we do that, I just, do you have a copy of the ZBA decision at all? Or has that come out yet? Or?
I don't believe that it has been issued yet. I do have a letter from the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
And I can submit that for the record.
Yes, that would probably be
Sure.
appropriate.
And I have not received a copy of the decision. I don't know if it's been written. We were there last Wednesday, I believe. So it hasn't been that long, but certainly would be happy to provide the board with that as soon. Both of the items, the special exception and the variance, were both unanimously approved, 5-0.
Okay. I did get a phone call before I left work tonight from Luke Herron, who's the town engineer. Has he had an opportunity to review your plan set at all?
He has. And
did he make any comments or technical?
he did issue comments. I unfortunately don't have a copy of his letter.
Okay.
We haven't officially responded to him. I have made revisions to his comments. I don't know if Jay saw a copy of his comments. Quite honestly, they were kind of minor, and it was nothing that we didn't feel comfortable addressing. I kind of wanted to wait till we were in front of the board tonight in case there are other changes that need to be made before responding to him. But I would anticipate getting those back to him quickly and hopefully getting him to sign off. I did speak to him, and he actually asked if he thought that, he would be required to be here tonight. I said no, because not necessarily be talking technical tonight. So,
okay. All right. So I think what I would like to do before we even get further down the road, we should do a acceptance of the plan, which is basically that's a paper exercise, and what we're doing is, do we have everything that we need for the plan to go forward? Jay, I want to know, I know you didn't receive any further plan sets, and I know there was a concern because we weren't sure what the applicant was going to be doing. But in your judgment, would you feel comfortable that we should accept this plan tonight, or do we need more information?
I think that given the way the applicant has characterized the changes that they're seeking to make and withdrawing the conditional use permit, essentially the open space development that's being proposed is, very similar to the plans that were previously submitted. We've heard that there are going to be changes, so we know that we'll anticipate another plan set coming, but I think it would be reasonable to accept the plan, open the public hearing, so that the application could advance. So I think, and in that sense, we have the information that we need. And certainly when it comes to the routine, have a butter's been notified.
Right.
The answer to that is yes. I would say that's, the board may want to consider the yield plan and whether or not, you feel that that's reasonable and provide some input on that. But beyond that, I think the plan is, certainly ready for acceptance. You could do that beforehand or after. You don't necessarily need to do that in order to accept the plan.
And I think we addressed the fact that there is no regional impact to this project, I would imagine.
And in withdrawing the conditional use permit and moving forward the open space development, it doesn't actually change the layout of the lots. It doesn't change the road, doesn't change the drainage. It's simply, I guess it would be a different approach of applying for approval from the board. And I think that's probably better complying given that we're not requesting a conditional use permit.
Okay. So abutters have been notified, all fees have been paid, and all the Mylars and documents have been submitted, the appropriate documents.
Plan.
Just plan sets.
Just plan
Mylar will
sets,
come
I'm
later.
sorry, okay.
Knew what you meant.
The original. Okay. All right. Hearing that has been done, I bring it to the board. What does the board want to do? Do we want to accept this plan? If that is the case, we can entertain a motion to accept it. The acceptance is not a approval of the plan. It is only an acceptance as to the documents, as to fees paid, abutters notified, and so forth. So it's really a preliminary matter. But if we feel that everything is complete in terms of that part of this, we can certainly do that. So,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Joan isn't here, so I was writing notes and I missed some key things.
Oh,
And I just
it's
want to
okay.
make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Because we sort of switched gears to this open, conservation open space.
Yep.
You highlighted in here the pink areas.
Yes.
Okay, so when I looked at the old plans that are in the town hall, and it was fine. And then you went for the special permit over on the 3A. I just want to understand where we were when we
Yep.
left.
Yep.
And if you were granted this in the last couple of weeks
Yes.
since we last met.
Yes.
So, okay, that's been approved, and I wrote down the other variances that you had done. So what were you, because all of a sudden the road got introduced when I was writing notes, and I just want to make sure I understood what was going on. I understood about the railroad that was there before, or whatever, that path.
Yep.
And the easement you'll grant.
Yep.
Why are these in pink again?
So
No, from the frontage.
this is the plan that we submitted.
Yeah.
I just highlighted it. So one of the requirements of the open space development is that no house can be located within an existing right of way, which
Okay.
is road lot lines. So it would push these back to here. So you wouldn't be able to build on this lot. Same thing here. You'd have to push the house all the way back. So this is none of the lot lines changed. The layout of the road didn't change. We're not proposing to change any of that.
So what happens to the pink lots up there? The existing house will
So
stay. Yeah.
one of the dimensional requirements of the conservation open space development, if you look, I don't know if you have a copy of the regs with you.
Up the road.
Section 575.6.
Yeah, they're in here. Yeah.
One of the dimensional requirements is that, you have 150 foot building setback from the existing right of way. And as part of those dimensional requirements, it's not actually a waiver, it just gives the board the right to approve a plan kind of in variation specific to those dimensional requirements.
So you want to go to this open space concept, and
Yep.
you're asking later that we would give you a waiver on those lots in pink.
It's not technically a waiver.
Well, not a waiver, but
You can
what you're gonna
approve
ask.
the plan as is in variation. from
Okay, so
that
that'll be a little
specific requirement.
shorter. And what about
Yep.
that one down there?
So-
What did you expect down there?
So the other thing is that another item in the dimensional requirements is that all lots have to be located off the proposed road.
Mhm.
So this lot would not have access to the proposed road, and this lot would not have access to the proposed road.
Okay,
And that's pretty much it. That's again, it's not a waiver, it's just an approval and a variation from those specific dimensional requirements. And then we would deed restrict this green area, which is all wetland anyway, so nothing could ever be done on there. And then granting this easement across the.
but you still want to build on the 3A,
Yes.
even though it didn't have the road.
Yes,
That's
that
what you were
would be
talking
the-
about. I'm sorry, I just heard
That's right,
road
that
and I
would
went,
be the
okay.
16th lot.
But this isn't all wetland, this is dry right here.
There are some small portions of dry land. Yep.
It's not all wetland.
So what I was saying before is that with a conservation open space development, you actually are allowed a lot with 90 feet of frontage. So we have that here, although we do have a variance to. It was a different way of approaching it with a conditional use permit. It didn't require that lot be off of the main road, and we would need that variance. And now we've kind of changed just procedurally how we're applying without doing the conditional use permit. We just need the board to say, yes, okay, we're allowing you to have one lot that's not on, two lots that aren't on the proposed road, as well as that 150 foot right of way setback.
There was a lot going on when I was trying to take
Yeah, no,
notes.
I
So
know.
like, there's a road where's it?
So real quick question, so deeming it an open space development means you're compliant to all that right now? You don't need any variance?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of that is that we would not be allowed that 16th lot without that new yield plan because that lot requires a variance. And we would not have, so this right now, this is a conventional subdivision layout. All these lots meet the minimum requirements of a conventional subdivision. We could squeeze them if we did an open space development. We don't want to do that. One of the things we looked at is if we did squeeze it, could we avoid crossing the wetland, which is obviously permits and expense. You still have to cross it in order to get all the lots you'd need. And also the applicant doesn't necessarily want to do skinnier lots. It makes it harder to build the type of house with a garage, attached garage that you'd like to do. So the open space development doesn't require that you do reduced frontage. It just allows you to do reduced frontage. Right. So we could reduce the frontage to 90 feet on each one of those. Given how skinny the lot is, we would actually not even have the lot area if we went down to 90 feet, just because they wouldn't be deep enough to get the minimum lot area. But it would allow us to reduce it if we wanted to. Could potentially shorten up the road a little bit, but we don't necessarily want to do that.
So why'd that change? Is it just like, oh, this dawned on us, we can do it this way? Did something change?
No, I think it was more just, Jay took a look at it and didn't really feel that he would support a conditional use permit for this lot. Just there's the conditional use permit you're allowed. So in the regulations, you have to do a conservation open space development. In order to do a conventional subdivision, you actually have to ask for a conditional use permit. There are 6 criteria. And one of those criteria that we were requesting it is that the property is ill-suited for a conservation open space development. And I think that Jay just felt that our arguments pertaining to that weren't necessarily that strong. So
All right, so nothing changed in the plan though, like you said.
nothing changed. Yep.
Although what you're saying is with this yield plan, if we don't allow the variance for the 150-foot setback, you build this cul-de-sac and then you don't need that variance?
So no, that yield plan just proves that technically you could. So in order to propose an open space development, you have to provide a yield plan that shows how many lots you could get conventionally. And then, we could squeeze those and build 16 lots, closer together. You'd never be able to build more than the yield proves that you could build. So although that seems silly conceptually to build a small road like that, and likely nobody would ever do that, it proves that you technically could if you wanted to. So that
Okay.
a yield sometimes looks silly, it doesn't make sense, nobody would ever build it that way, but it allows you that many lots that then you can do in an open space development.
And you're saying because you've got this buildable area, even though on here you're shading it that you wouldn't be able to build over there. Right? You're shading it, you're
Yeah.
shading that. You're saying your deed.
This is that yield.
Right.
So
So you'd have to build in that area in order to get that 150-foot setback from that pavement.
yes,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So usually a yield plan isn't, it's, I think the requirements just say that it has to be kind of a layout plan. So if we did a yield plan like this for a conventional subdivision, we wouldn't necessarily be deeding this because it's not an open space development and you're not required to do that.
As a conventional.
That's right.
But you're applying for an open space.
Right. So in order to do the open space, you always have to provide a yield plan.
Okay.
And it's actually usually not part of the plan set. It's just kind of something that's, hey, planning board, here's our yield plan. We can prove that we can conventionally by right build 16 lots, and then here's our layout for the open space development with 16 lots.
Oh, so you're saying this is if it was a conventional plan?
That's correct.
That's how it was.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
I mixed that up. All right.
It is very confusing. Jay and I met twice to discuss this, so.
Okay.
But
Yeah, as far
I
as
think it all makes sense. It took us a while to get there, but yeah.
Yeah, as far as accepting the plans, it sounds like that part of it sounds straightforward to me.
Okay. Everyone else feel the same way? All right. Well, if that's the case, if the board doesn't have any other questions, I don't entertain a motion to accept the plan. Or I say plan, but the subdivision plan that's being proposed.
I'll make a motion to accept the subdivision plan as proposed.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second, who was that? James. Do I have discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0. Okay, so the board has accepted the plan for the subdivision, proposed subdivision. So now it is there anything else that you want to add in terms of the proposal? I guess.
I don't think so. I just, I'd point to page 27, 575.6.1.f. That just is what I was discussing, and it states that the planning board may authorize variations from the above standards, except for setbacks from wetland, shoreline, or any requirement covered by state regulation or addressed elsewhere in this ordinance for the purpose of providing flexibility in the design of subdivision to meet the objectives of this ordinance section. So it's not necessarily a waiver, it just allows the board specifically to the dimensional requirements, which if you read section C, access or frontage to individual lots shall be taken from the proposed road network. And then buffer, nope, that's not it. All building structures and parking shall be set back a minimum of about 150 feet from the edge of a public right of way. So those, I guess it's section 2 items in section C that we would like the board to approve in variation to those specific requirements.
right. Well, I'll ask the board, does the board have any more questions of the applicant? Jay, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. All right. So you know what? At this time, if no one has any questions, I'm going to open up to public comment. At this time, does anybody from the public have any questions for the applicant? Anybody from the public here this evening would like to speak? Okay, I have someone in the back who will raise their hand. If you want to come forward, or if you want to state your name and where you're from, and or your address, and you can actually, I mean, if you want to, right there on that table where Kevin usually sits, you can certainly welcome to do that.
My name is Marion Colby, 323 Charles Bancroft Highway. My apologies to those present who heard my comments at the zoning board hearing on 9/11, but I appreciate the chance to have the hearing board, the planning board, hear my thoughts. As an abutter to the proposed project, I have some concerns. My property at 323 Charles Bancroft Highway is a historically significant home from the 1760s and one of the oldest in town. My grandparents bought the house in the 1930s. My grandfather and his brothers owned the Colby Brothers Farm, one of the largest in New England. There were lots of open spaces back then. Times have changed, and the population of our town is almost 40 times what it was back then. Along with that has come a drastic reduction in our open spaces. Part of the charm of our little town is the farm fields along Route 3A, and a big reason people visit Litchfield and decide to move here. When I grew up, our house at 323 was surrounded by productive farmland. Just this year, farmland was lost to further development. And also, although it has benefited the town in many ways, more productive farmland was lost when the river access was created. The heritage of our town as a farming community is at stake with further development of farmland. In the recent past, a nomination was submitted for Route 3A to be designated as a New Hampshire scenic highway, and with the loss of open spaces and farming vistas, that would not be possible. The nature of the town back when my house was built in the 1760s was that homes were built close to the roadway for convenience and because of problems with winter storms. As the town developed and the roads were widened, these early homes became perilously close to 3A, and a saving grace for my home is the little farm field north of my property that gives us some open space close to this historic structure. Over the years, the McQuestion family has done its best to maintain this open space from the time it was a hay field for their dairy farm. Today, it is a field growing vegetables for the many people who visit McQuestion Farm Stand. It would be a shame to see this beautiful little field lost to development. This project, the proposed project, includes a number of houses to be built off of Hillcrest Road, which will not impact the scenic beauty of Route 3A and our farming heritage and are not in question at this time, and which gives the property owners a chance to profit from their land. I respect their right to use their land, but it does not mean that we have to allow construction on every acre of land in town. Just because a variance has been granted does not mean that the project has to be approved. This is something that the neighbors are not in favor of. We would rather see the open space maintained for all the townspeople to enjoy. If the planning board does approve this project, I hope the developers will be sensitive to the new building's impact on the aesthetic value of this beautiful farming neighborhood and take into consideration the impact of the reduction of open space will have on our little town. I feel there will be a negative impact on my property if this project is approved. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this matter, and I hope that my concerns will be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public here this evening who wish to come forward and speak? Okay. Hearing none, I'll leave it open for public comment, just, in case someone decides that they want to say something. But I'm going to bring it back to the board. What is the board's feeling on this project or the subdivision? Is it something that you guys are in favor of, not in favor of.
I think we have to be careful about feelings though, right?
Yes, yes, we do. Um,
I don't know what grounds to not approve this on. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the approving of variance on the setback for 3A. Because if you look at that stretch of 3A, it really is, it's all historic buildings.
Mhm.
And to have a new house in the middle of, you said your house was built in the 1700s? There's like, I think 3 or 4 houses along there built around that same time frame, or at least they look similar.
Early 1800s probably.
And I don't know that, I don't think that putting a new house in the middle of all that benefits the town and what like the historical society is trying to do with getting the buildings onto the state registry.
Mhm.
I think at least that part of the land in Litchfield is, we need to be more careful about that than say the development part of Hillcrest here.
Well, we built the house where the old Grange Hall used to be.
Mhm.
What about that? That was historical, right? I'm Fred McQuestion. We built a house right there where the old Grange used to be. What about that?
It's nice to meet you, Fresh. I wasn't on the board at that point,
But
is
you
all I
know
can
what
tell you.
mean?
Can we have your address, please?
159 Grange Circle.
Thank you.
I will point out that this lot it's 17.2 feet short of required frontage. So we're not talking about a lot. It also opens as the lot moves back 250 feet. And as we discussed in the zoning board, it's actually has a lot more frontage than many lots in this stretch. And the zoning board, although I understand that's a completely separate board, part of their vote was that they did feel that in requesting the variance that it did fit the character of the neighborhood. I think that the overall plan is a little bit deceiving just in seeing how big that lot is. That lot will be 11 and a half, a little over 11 and a half acres total. It obviously incorporates a lot of that wetland, but it's a large lot. I don't know is it possible to flip to page 6? That'd be 7 of the PDF. Yeah, that one there. So you can see that lot opens quite a bit to the back. It's a fairly good amount of area. The house would be required to be 50 feet back from the right of way, so it's not right up against the road.
If I may, folks, my name is Paul Chisholm. I work with Tucker here at Keach Nordstrom Associates. I just want to point out one thing about that lot. If you go back to Tucker's colored plan here, remembering that that this is, again, one single lot that will have several restrictions on it. Those restrictions include the open space area here and then a recreational easement, again, for the benefit of the town. The idea of that and the idea of switching this project from a conventional subdivision to an open space subdivision is exactly what feeding into the concerns similar to those and what I just heard from you, Ms. Stevens. It's just that if, one of the goals of the plan is to basically preserve that type of land area, and that's exactly what this is doing. The only area that would be developed or potentially developed in that case would be a single family home on this area right here. I mean, if you look at what this is, it's about a third of the total property area. Now, the goal of these regulations isn't to prevent development happening all over the farm fields or anything like that. A good portion of this land is used for farming, and that could be maintained in that open space. area. So it's not, again, we're not trying to preserve all of it, we're just trying to preserve a portion of it, which is exactly what, those regulations are written for. So I just wanted to point that out as a point of clarity for you all.
But how far back from the road would a house be built if it were in that pink area?
It couldn't be closer than 50 feet. So if you see on that sheet, this is the 50-foot setback line here. So with 150 feet, you'd be all the way back here.
So I apologize, I missed that little walkthrough, but what is there now on the 3A site? Is there any structures there now?
No, it's just a field, I believe. What is there now?
So it's just a field that's,
It's used for,
there's crops there right now.
okay. And so this is maybe a more basic question, I guess, but why are these two things being considered together? I mean, you have these homes that are coming off of Hillcrest, then you have an area, right, that separates this one home that's standalone, not part of any subdivision. Why are these things being joined like that?
Well, the applicant would desire to have a house built on that lot over there. Part of the conditional use permit that we were requesting for a conventional subdivision, now that we have that variance, we could build there in a conventional subdivision. In trying to be more compliant with the town.
So you could build where? On that 3A site?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
If I could interject, under the ordinance, any subdivision proposed on a parcel that is 20 acres or more has to submit a conservation open space development. And you can't circumvent that by subdividing off a smaller portion of the lot. So because that's all one parcel, they have no choice but to consider the whole thing as one. Whether they want to propose a house lot there or not is their choice, but they have to consider the whole parcel.
And because of that large wetland, if that wetland wasn't there, we would likely have that lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. But because of that large wetland dividing dry land with access to Charles Bancroft Highway, that's why we have that 16th lot down in that area.
Is there gonna be a well there or town water? I'm not sure what goes there.
Hillcrest does have town water. That lot would have a well, yes.
Hillcrest does. What about that one?
That's correct. Yeah,
Charles Bancroft does as well.
that's it.
No, does not have water. It would be on a well.
Yeah. So we would bring town water off Hillcrest on Jennifer Drive. The lots would all have private septic, and then the one lot on Charles Bancroft would have private septic and private well. And those would all be incorporated in our state subdivision approval.
Not all the houses in that area were built in the 1700s or 1800s.
No, I know.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
But the house directly across the street was built in the 50s. The one next to it was built in the 50s. There's brand new houses being built. But,
No,
they're
I think
they're all common. I mean, it's not just all old houses in the area. That,
my bigger concern is how close is it to the road?
but
If it's gotta be
you wanna make a
250
condition
feet
that
back.
it's 75 feet off the road, we're fine with that.
I thought it was 250 feet that it needs to be back. Am I reading the wrong?
150.
Maybe I'm reading the wrong right.
150.
If you go to page 26, C, then the second paragraph says all building structures and parking shall be set back a minimum of 150 feet.
It says the setback buffer
Oh.
for 3A is 250.
You're correct.
Oh, you're right.
You're correct. Yeah.
So
Sorry about that.
To put it in perspective, this property line right here, so the kind of the south property line on the frontage is 306 feet. So we would still have, and then this line right here is like 380. So
Okay.
250 would be somewhere, in this range.
So we could still keep that 250 feet buffer and you'd still be able to build on the pink area. Because I also would not want to like have a driveway across the right of way either. It's kind of like it's a tough spot to figure out what's the lesser of the two evils, I guess. But although I don't know about house sizes, is that enough room to build a house in that side of that
Realistically,
250
a
vote?
little bit less of a buffer there would be ideal, but obviously we do hear your concern about how close it is, especially relative with the other properties there. But that, I would imagine that would kind of force the house to be up in this corner, and that may not necessarily be the best restriction to put that thing.
Without knowing the
In my mind,
land,
I
or-
picture the house sitting kind of in the middle, in the back here anyways.
I think that was on your plan, right? You had like a proposed. Oh no, that was for sewage loading. Sorry.
So that abandoned railroad bed that's there?
Yep.
So I think you said that there's a possibility maybe at some point that would actually be used as some sort of a trail.
It would require abutting properties to grant an easement as well, but it certainly gives the opportunity in the future if projects came forward on abutting properties to do that. Is that actually something that's in the regulations, Jay?
It's not in the regulations, it's in the master plan.
The master plan, okay. So Jay was the one that picked up on that. The master plan actually requests that any projects that come through in that area that have that old railroad bed provide an easement. So
But keep in mind that all the landowners own that right.
Yes.
So where I live, I have a big section of it.
it was deeded back to the property owners.
And this property has already been developed, so chances of ever getting
Right.
a right of way across that.
It's been developed with a home.
Yeah, there's a home built right here.
So the likelihood of that ever actually coming to reality, where there was some sort of a path or a bike path or a walking path, probably not that great, right? And there are already structures that have been built in that right of way.
But from there north is a possibility.
Yeah.
From there south, it's highly unlikely.
But we have no control over the abutting properties. It's just
I know. I
what we
understand.
can do
No,
on
no,
our
I understand,
property to
but-
try.
but If that house was set back, more in line with the rules, then
It
it's
would
gonna
be right up against
it's gonna
that.
be right up against, and if that ever did happen,
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying to assess the
Yep.
the realistic possibility that would actually happen at some point.
So
The existing houses that are there, this is an existing barn right here.
Yeah.
There's an existing house that's probably where it says map, or even a little closer to the road.
Mhm.
And then this other house is very close to the road, the one that Marion owns, is very close to the road. So this house would be set behind it anyway.
yeah, I mean, we're open if the board is willing to allow less than the 250.
One option as well, if the board doesn't like the idea of putting this in a recreational easement, that's something that we kind of talked about with Jay, and knowing, I'm a resident of Nashua, I live next to a bunch of old rail trails that have been converted into paths. They make sweet, like really great walking trails and stuff like that. Obviously, this is a long way from that, but this at least opens the door somewhat to have a discussion with other landowners and things like that. If the board didn't want to do something like that, we could certainly just keep it in the open space restriction. We don't have to do, we're just proposing that now, but that is something we could certainly talk about and, come to some sort of agreement on.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Yeah.
We have to stick with the master plan chapter, but it's not legally binding.
Well, it's,
I mean,
yeah, it's
I understand
advisory.
the argument in our paperwork.
It's a master plan. It's
I know.
not.
Although the
Yeah.
ordinance does reference the master plan.
Right.
So I mean, what you really want to think about is, this is under the Conservation Open Space Ordinance.
Mhm.
What is it, that you want this to look like, to see you have discretion in that area. I'd also stress, I mean, clearly you don't have to make a decision tonight. I think the applicants would certainly appreciate, hearing the thoughts of the board. The board receives input, but we know we have revised plans that we have to receive. We know those will have to be reviewed. So, these are not decisions you have to make this evening. You certainly could, but you don't have to.
I think also too, I would like to have, I know Luke Heron made comments and they were probably minor technicalities, but at least have those comments in place and maybe have an opportunity to see the zoning board's decision, see what they had to say.
Sure.
Would it be beneficial to have the Historical Society give us an opinion about their plans and how much of an impact would have?
I don't know, Kim, is that something?
That building's not, I don't think, going on the register at this point, okay, unless you want to do it, but that's not what we're doing at the moment. We're going for 3 buildings in town that the town owned. The old town hall, the library, and the old fire station. We're not doing that. Unless Marion wants to speak to that, but at the moment.
Well, I would like to, certainly, I would like to see the open space concept in place. I think we want to do that. But I certainly want to promote the agricultural piece as well. And I think the aesthetic of the town and how that's going to look, I guess that's the, I guess is sort of, what's going to be of it, in terms of, how is it going to be used? I don't know. But I do, certainly think that that's an important piece. And I think we should be following our master plan in terms of the, or at least looking to it to make it look like something that would, fit the character of the town. That's just my 2 cents, but.
So, yeah, and I'm sorry.
One thing I'd like you to think about in that, so that you don't approve that. So then go look at the piece of property that's across from the library and tell me that was a field at one time. Look at it now, just all overgrown, nobody takes care of it. So if there's a house there, the lawn's gonna get taken care of. And just because if it doesn't get approved, it's just gonna be in conservation. It's just gonna get attached to one of the other lot, and it's just gonna get overgrown. And it's gonna look up. So if you look across from the library, that was a very productive field at one time. It's not anymore because the state owned it, and I think now they use it. I was told, I don't know to be 100% sure, that they're using it to try to bring a cottontail rabbit back or something. The field across from the library, there was a portion of that. Across from that, between the library and the next house going north, that field there used to get farmed. But again, that got part of the subdivision. Now it's just grown up.
No, trees grew in there.
Just that, so long term, if you want it to look like a jungle, that's what that's going to end up being. So we can have a house there and have someone maintain it and have it look good, or we let it grow up into a bunch of shrub trees that are going to sit there. So it's kind of a trade-off. But the example's there. Look at it. I think it's very good. It's there.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to your comment about the historical capacity of this property itself, one of the things that you have to check when you file a wetlands permit with the state is you have to go to the state Division of Historic Resources, perform research, file an application with them. They issue you a letter basically saying there's nothing there or there's something there we want you to explore more. That has been done. I don't know the results. We can check and we can bring that back here next time. But I believe that there's nothing significant found here, on on this property specifically.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, that doesn't speak to adjacent properties or anything, it's just looking at this one piece, but
Mhm.
just to answer your question.
Okay.
That's, again, we'll bring that next time.
Okay.
And I can also tell you from experience that where I live, which most of you probably know where I live, I moved there in 1978, and they found those fields behind my house were probably 85, 88. There was sod fields, and that was sod. And by the time that I bought that field, those fields from the Colbys, they were pretty much all overgrown, and I cleared them and redid them so that they're back in the fields again. So it's they go pretty fast. They turn back into a forest.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, certainly, those are good points.
So I just got a question.
Yeah.
So the public input that we heard today
Yep.
is a concern about a lot of.
There's a
residents,
concern.
which-
There is a concern.
So.
Yeah.
But it seemed like an overarching plea
Mhm.
for development in the town.
Right.
What's on the table for us right now? 50 feet from the road and 250 feet from the road? Is that?
We're
basically
pretty
what's-
much,
In between, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's basically, they want to subdivide these lots. They want to have that piece to be an open space. And they're basically withdrawing their conditional use permit so that they can, because they're seeing it as the planning board has more flexibility to, adjust how that is going to look in terms of, whereas if they just went with the regular conditional use permit, then there's a little bit more, it's a little bit more, I want to say rigidity, but they have to go through a little bit more of, to try to get in what they need to get in. So it's sort of a way to provide the open space, but also, I believe, to also provide and adjust the how they can fit the lots in.
I'd also like to point out that part of this is if we did move forward with a conditional use permit and it was approved, the setback's 50 feet. And as you saw from that yield plan, technically somebody could go in and by right, without any variations from the requirements, build a road with a cul-de-sac in there and then build a house off of it. So, the strict compliance would be 250 feet. We've switched to the open space, the conservation open space development to try to better comply with what the town requires. So we're trying to provide more of what the town ordinances require, and part of that is giving that easement, deeding that wetland into open space. So I do think that given all that, we're actually less impactful. So I do think that 250 feet, and I'm happy when we come back, I'll provide a little bit of a sketch. So we were requesting 50. I thought it was 150. I stand corrected. It's actually 250. So, maybe we could, the board could consider reducing from 250 to 150 rather than all the way to 50.
Okay.
150 feet from back from the road is quite a bit,
Yeah, right.
Well, if 250 feet is within that pink area, what's to stop you from building right now with that 250 feet setback? There's not anything, is there?
If this was subdivided one lot into two lots, with the variance that we have, we could go, once that's subdivided one lot into two lots, we could get a building permit tomorrow.
If the board granted the conditional use permit.
Yes.
So end of the day, the board has the discretion one way or the other. Either you would choose to grant a conditional use permit, which is at the discretion of the board to allow a conventional subdivision, or you could choose to approve an open space subdivision and allow for variations from the setback terms. But in either case, the board has the discretion to make those decisions.
See, I think that's more what I was thinking was, I'm not trying to necessarily limit what you can do with your property, but I wouldn't want a house 50 feet from Charles Bancroft's in between these, older, more historic homes. So,
Okay.
so I guess I still don't, so if we grant if we allow for the, as you propose the open space, so couldn't you could just build a house at 250 feet or maybe we reduce it to 200 or something. You could still do it that way.
Yes,
Is that right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that is a pretty good middle ground because then it's not getting into, like you said, with how you have it deeded, the restricted use. I think that's a pretty good happy medium. I don't think 50 feet is enough from
Yeah.
3A.
Okay. Well, I'll revise the plans and I'll put a 150-foot setback on there.
I mean, that's personally, that's me as, trying to voice from, like what our master plan is saying. If you guys feel differently, obviously,
Yeah.
speak up, please.
No, I think we have a duty to voice the sentiments of the residents,
Right.
Absolutely.
but being 50 feet, that's just a property line. It's not necessarily a house there.
It's a building setback, so you would not be able to put any
It is-
structure
okay,
closer
it's
than
just
50
the-
feet.
okay.
So you could build it right up against 50 feet, and that's not 50 feet off the existing edge of pavement. That's the right of way. So the right of way is 50 feet wide. The road's 24 feet wide, so it's 13 feet off of the edge of the road, and then 50 feet back from there. So it's technically 63 feet. So it would be 163 feet if we were 150 feet, 150 foot building setback. And if we showed that setback on the plans and it was recorded, and when somebody went to pull the building permit, the building inspector would see the approved plan and wouldn't grant a building permit for a house within that setback.
Yeah, for the record, again, just another point of clarification. The setbacks that are agreed to between the board and the applicant have to be shown and put on this plan the way it was agreed to. So that's why it's important for us when we're revising the plan to make sure we're all on the same page with this lot and with all of the setbacks really. What I'm hearing is obviously 50 is not enough, 250 might be too much. So what we can do is take a look at what might be appropriate by looking at that area specifically. I don't know that we have enough just on this paper to do that. We can look at aerials, different things, to kind of come up with a better game plan for the property. And I think that would be appropriate. The other thing I think we would like clarification on before we leave tonight is just what is the board's take on the two different types of, I guess, the proposed easement here and then the open space? Because I did hear a question or two about that. Do you find that to be appropriate the way we've described it here, or would you rather not do the recreational easement over the old rail trail, or what is the feeling of the board? Because that's something that we can certainly incorporate into the next plan revision as well.
Or do you want recreation over the whole piece? We can have that too. If you wanted the whole area that's in the conservation, the whole thing would be recreation.
How are they gonna access that?
As there's other development.
So I appreciate the recreational easement, because, I initially, when I read this, that wasn't there, and that was an impediment to me. So I appreciate that you were willing to accommodate that. And my personal preference is that would continue, even though it may not come to pass in our lifetimes. But I think that should be an option as part of a master plan. I think it should be there.
And that's fair.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
I said I
to.
agree with that.
You agree with it? Yeah, I would agree. I think it's definitely, I would like to see that, and I would also like to see, something preserved at least for the aesthetic value. So I think what we might want to do, okay, is maybe have you go back And I mean, you've heard from us, you've heard from the abutters. And see if you can do some sort of revision maybe, or see if you can some way make it so that, that it meets the requirements of whatever. I mean, the setback is 250 on the Charles Bancroft. We talked about, compromise 200. Can you do that? Certainly, that's something to look into maybe. But I'm not gonna, what I would like to see is a revised set of plans, I think. What I would like also, I would like to see a copy of the zoning decision. I would like to see a copy of Luke Herron's report, or if he's gonna come at the next meeting, if he wants to, or if it's necessary for him to come. Maybe it isn't, but if he's willing to come, I would like to hear his comments. I'd also like to hear, I would also like to see, obviously if Jay can get plans ahead of time. So give him a little bit of a leeway so that he can review them and have an opportunity to do that before the next hearing. That would be very helpful. So he can go over it and make recommendations and so forth. And then we can give us a little more of an idea of where we want to go. But so I'm thinking maybe if, you come back to another meeting, we can try and see where you are in terms of a revised plan.
Maybe a second meeting in October.
It's the 15th.
It's the 15th. I know, yeah, I believe it is. Yeah.
It's the 15th.
16th. Yeah.
Is it 16th?
The next meeting is October 2nd.
Right. And
the next meeting is October 1st.
Oh, okay.
The meeting after that is October 15th.
but I think, is there a deliberative session going on? I think, isn't that?
That's on the first.
It's on the 1st. So I think we were moving it to that meeting is going to be the Wednesday after the deliberative session, because I don't think we're going to have.
We have to decide that.
Yeah, I think we're going to be deciding that. And I think that's probably what's going to happen, maybe, if it's the will of the board.
Yeah, and if we were to
15th.
continue to October 15th, like I said, we've already been making revisions. I feel very strongly that we could probably get
Right.
all of Lou's comments cleaned up and get a clean letter from him.
I just want to make sure you get the information to Jay ahead of time and that he's getting an opportunity to review
No,
it.
absolutely.
So-
I thought we go for a month every time. We kind of go 2 weeks.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, we'd be happy if the board would consider a continuance to October
Yeah.
15th.
I mean, and give you an opportunity to do that, and then we'll go from there. So we can continue it to a date and time certain. I'll leave the public hearing open at this, remain open for the duration. And what we can do is just vote on a date and time certain for another meeting, and you can come in with a new set of plans, and hopefully you can get them to Jay beforehand, and we can review them and go from there.
Absolutely.
That works, you guys. I think, I certainly, I appreciate the hard work that you put into this. And certainly I think what you're trying to do is trying to, accommodate both sides, and I appreciate that, and I really do, and I think that's a good thing. And hopefully, we can, at the next meeting, we can straighten out whatever issues have straightened out and go forward and do a conditional approval or something. And
So just so I'm clear, we're directing them to go and change the setback to 150?
they have to go back and revise their plans. They didn't give a set of plans to Jay ahead of time for this meeting. What I would like is to have give Jay the opportunity to review them ahead of time. That way, if he can make any comments, and then the board can review what those comments are, as well as having the zoning decision A copy of that would be in place. We would get Luke Karen's comments because we don't have those. I just want to procedurally, I just want to make sure that we have all ducks in a row before we go. And just,
And with that lot, if I may, I think we didn't pick an exact setback. What I heard was it's more than 50 and it's probably less than 250, and they'll take a look at the property and see what might make sense and come back with a proposal.
Right.
We can put together some plans and potentially some images showing maybe the outline of a typical house that we've seen built and that type of stuff. I think that would help visually for the board to see that. So
Be great.
we will absolutely do that.
And I totally agree with you. Any house on 3A should be more than 50 feet.
No, I agree also.
Okay. So,
Another quick question, sorry.
no, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
wasn't at the walkthrough. Was that part of the walkthrough?
I don't think that, no, I unfortunately wasn't there either. Our wetland scientist was, but I do believe that they only walked down to that area. It's a good walk down there. I mean, these plans, this is 120 scale, so it's very deceiving how big this lot is. I think I see that's 2,500 feet, so that's what, more than half a mile. Yeah. So they walked down there, and I walked down there with Joan a couple days before because she wasn't able to be at the site walk. But I think if you drove by there, it'd be pretty easy to see that area that we're talking about.
Yeah. So if I go out there and pace it out, I'm not going to get in trouble for trespassing.
No.
I'll go with you.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
I'm new to the group. I think the images that you were talking about with 3A, but do you have kind of an idea, being a single family, of what you want the structure to look like? I think that's going to ease a lot of tensions with people. If you throw something in that's cookie cutter,
No,
it might be concerning.
If you go over to Page Road, subdivision that I have over on Page Road, it's, what do we call it?
Weatherstone.
Huh?
Weatherstone?
Weatherstone, right up Page Road. If you look in there, it's the Beals building the houses.
Mhm.
That's where it's.
Okay. So do you have anything else you want to add, or you all said, or?
No, I think that we'll do our homework to get
All right.
revised documents. Like I said, they've already been revised; they just haven't been
Right.
issued out.
Right.
So we'll get those to Jay. We'll get those to Lou. I'll get a
Appreciate
response to
that.
Lou's comments. So
Okay.
get you guys a zoning decision and everything. We had kind of anticipated tonight to be a little bit of a discussion anyway, and then we would come back for a subsequent hearing. So, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I think what we'll do, the board's willing, we will basically, I would entertain a motion to move, to continue this hearing to, is it October 16th? 15th. That date and time starting here at 7 PM in Town Hall, to allow the applicant the opportunity to revise his plan set.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have discussion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Okay, thank you very much for coming,
We'll see you in a
and
few
we
weeks.
will see you next time. Okay?
Just a little whiplash going to open space.
Yeah, I know.
I just want to.
Have a good evening, guys. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda, committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Kim, do you have anything?
Ew, I have to find my notes. Caught me off guard with that question there about the Historical Society.
Sorry.
Why do we doing open spacing? What? All right, I may as well do that one first. Historical Society, on September 9th, we went to the Board of Selectmen to approve 3 buildings that it owns. to see if they would give it approval to go to final review at the New Hampshire, historical division. So we can get on the the New Hampshire State Register. That was the 1851 Old Litchfield Town Hall, the 1924 Aaron Cutler Memorial Library, and the 1958 Old Litchfield Fire Station. And they agreed that they would let that go to final review. Just because you get to final review doesn't mean you'll still pass. And even if you do pass, it doesn't mean you'll make it on the register yet. But at least it goes through the process of getting it really finalized. It's a very strict process. Tomorrow night, we go to the school board about the 1930 Griffin Grammar School. And on Monday, we go to the presbytery on the 1844 Litchfield Presbyterian Church. We expect that one to go through. We're not sure about the school board. We'll see how that goes. Yep. So we'll respect their decision. NRPC, because I have to go tomorrow to the school board because we thought the school was owned by the town. And we found it wasn't. So that's not, so I have an unexpected meeting and I apologize for that in advance. But I don't know if you still want to go to that NRPC meeting tomorrow night at 30 Temple Street. We can touch base afterwards.
Yeah, I got an email from
Okay, perfect.
Sabrina Peterson.
Yes.
Yep, I have her. Yeah. Okay, I have to update my contact info. Heritage Commission, we met on September 10th. The bylaws were finally completed and they're posted up onto the web. So that's ready to go. So again, we weren't doing anybody's personal residences. We just went for buildings that were, used by the community in general. Yeah. I think that's it for reports.
Okay,
That's it for me.
thank you. Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee was supposed to meet September 26th. I just got an email today that that meeting has been canceled. So I have to update everybody on next time on when the next meeting is, probably in October. I went to the Conservation Commission meeting the other night. Obviously, Hillcrest subdivision was on the agenda. The Conservation Commission did vote to recommend that the project as they submitted it. Approval of September 3rd, 2019 meeting minutes. Did anyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes and there's any questions?
Curtis, was that when were you here September?
No, I think it was back in the summertime.
Oh,
Didn't see anything. So if they look good, I would entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Do I have discussion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Okay. Any other business? Jade, is there anything that you would like to add before closing? Okay, anybody from the board have anything to add in closing? Okay. Well, if there's nothing else to add, and I don't have anything to add, does anyone want to entertain a motion to adjourn?
Oh, do we want to talk about the?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, I'm sorry, yes. The next meeting. So my understanding is there's a deliberative session that's going to take place next Tuesday that we meet at the beginning of October. How does the board feel about moving the meeting to, is it Wednesday?
Yes,
After?
Wednesday the 2nd.
Yeah,
Let me just check.
if it works for you folks,
So that's the second.
the 2nd of October. Okay.
works for me. I
Works for
may
me.
not be here. I have to figure that out.
Okay. All right.
Soccer practice.
I got it. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll meet on October 2nd, which is going to be the Wednesday instead of the Tuesday, and at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall.
Do we know what the schedule is for this room? If it's open Wednesday?
I don't think there's anything here. I know the zoning board meets on a Wednesday, but I don't know if that's the third Wednesday of the month. Yeah.
See if we can get there quick.
You never
I don't
know,
where
I
it
guess,
is.
right? Plus,
Yeah.
what's budget season? Oh, that's another.
School Board and Conservation Commission.
Budget.
I think the school board's, I don't know if that's in here. Oh, yeah, that is in here
Is that the second?
on the 2nd. And then Conservation Commission's at 7 on the 2nd.
I know conservation usually meets on Thursdays. Are they sure?
Thursdays, they forgot to take the Wednesday meetings off.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Oh,
Wednesdays.
yeah.
Okay. So it's not actually there. Okay, so I think we're okay.
We're good.
Well, that's if the school board meeting, do they ever go only an hour? The school board?
I don't know.
Do they ever go what?
An hour, more
Less
than
than
an
an
hour.
hour, because 6 to
Sometimes
7.
they're marathons, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on what's going on.
You'd be cutting them off.
Well, I mean, certainly, unless we just want to say we're not going to have a meeting that night, and just forego it.
Aware of anything yet on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything being on the agenda.
Well, how about this? All right, maybe change of plan. How about we won't have a meeting on October 1st when we normally meet. But if something does come up, we'll schedule something and make sure that we can get people in to do it if that works for everybody. I don't know, because obviously if the school board's here, then I doubt we would have this room. I would think they would be here for a while. So, but if nothing happens, then we would just shoot an email to you guys saying there's no meeting. But we can say tentatively right now, there isn't a meeting unless something happens, unless something comes up.
There isn't.
There isn't a meeting.
That's fair.
How about that?
Okay.
Does that work for everybody? Okay.
And given that you have to submit your application 21 days before the agenda date, it's pretty unlikely.
Right. Yeah. So with that said, all right. So we agree on that. We will not have a meeting on October 1st, tentatively. Okay. All right. So with that, then that was the other thing. There was always one thing. The budget for the planning board. Do we know anything? I don't know if you're. I know Joan is probably the one I need to speak to about that. Maybe I should just touch base with her about that and see, because I know it's budget season and they're going through cycles, and it's the last thing that you think about. But I just wanted to.
Well, actually, it brings a good point. There was an email sent about a workshop on a
Workshop.
Friday in October.
October. Okay. I will touch base with Joan.
Before,
Yeah.
but there is a cost to it.
Yeah, she said to get
Roadway.
back to her or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's NHMA,
NHMA. Yeah.
New Hampshire Municipal
Still
Association.
association.
Yeah. For that one also.
Right. Which is probably a good one to go to.
It is a good one to go to if you can and you're interested in road law.
Right.
So I would have to let her know if I want to go to that, because it looks like you had to register or something.
Right. If you register, and I think if you submit your receipt or whatever, you can get reimbursed by the town
Okay.
to go, because it's part of the planning board, and you can do that. So, yeah. But if that's something you're interested in, certainly I would encourage everybody to do that. I think is it Steve Buckley who does it?
I'm sure it'll be Steve.
Yeah, he's the guy that usually does them.
He usually doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's that. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstain. Motion passes 600. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and we will see you on tentatively on October 15th. Good night.